This is one of the little portraits that I've started, and I showed you guys. It was on the green paper. It was the Selenier. Selenier. I hope I'm saying it right. I always feel such like a tongue twister. Anyways, okay, so I used the photo on the right. This was from a photo shoot that Scott and I did with the wonderful model, Lysandra. Usually I do turn my photos into black and white, but this, this was fine. I just used it like that. And originally, I was just, since it was green paper, I was just gonna kind of do reds, and I wanted to see what it was gonna look like. Reds and, maybe some hot oranges. But as I did it, I was like, this is falling a little flat for me. Maybe it's too close to like skin tone. I don't know. It was just getting like boring. And so then I decided, okay, so what I then decided to do is, I'll show you guys here. I have some of those kind of pastel pencils and some of the reds and kind of pinks a little bit, but mainly the reds and oranges. I chose these are softer. So these are by Unison, and just some really light blues and greens. And what I've decided to do, let's not get dizzy here, is just on the very, very top. You see how it's very much like Impressionism. So I have the kind of oranges as the lights. I have the sort of pink reds, or the lighter reds, as sort of like the transitions. But then I wanted to play with adding some of these greens on top. And because it's opposite, but it'll also hopefully complement that painting. I said paper, not painting. So that's what I'm doing. I'm glad that this camera is showing up a little bit with those. So what I've done also is I had a white sheet of paper right next to here, so I can see that one's a little bit more blue-gray and one's a little bit more just a normal green. And so I'm going to kind of, let's see what it looks like. And you see that I am putting it on. I'm not going back and forth like this, and I'm not smudging it. And this paper, now I've done pastels for a long time, and a lot of the times in the past, I would put stuff on and I would rub. And I was doing it in a very soft manner. With these papers, it is forcing me to do it differently, which is good. I'm glad. It's forcing me to be out of my comfort zone. So you see, I'm taking this you see how I just sort of lightly drag it. And let me see, yeah, this is that kind of medium green. So this maybe along the edges, I think I might be a little bit too dark in the lightest lights. So this is kind of like what you would call maybe Monet, how we would see his strokes. I do have to have it relatively masked in. I can't just do strokes like this and have lots and lots of the paper showing through if it's too contrasty. It is a little bit about trial and error, and at least getting a base coat down so that when you do these strokes, and I'm touching very, very lightly, because if you press down too hard, you can't go back. So really, please just think about how little can I put down, and it's all about just vibrancy. So now my eye is catching the green and the red together, and I don't know how much I'm going to put down. Start off slow and gradually, but I also just want to be very honest with you that it is like I'm touching it with a delicate feather touch. Okay, so now, see, these are pretty close, but they're different enough that so this is just green 5. This is a very soft pastel. Remember, look at that. It just comes off in your finger just by touching it. So now, just in the very light parts, this will be the vibration. Oh, okay. Sometimes even with the soft pastels, you can see how I use this. When you use parts that maybe are still relatively like right out of the box, sometimes they don't want to come off that well. So either you need to wipe it with a paper towel or, you know, on a sheet of paper, kind of rub it a little bit. But I'm going to use a part that I already used. This is just a very basic technique. So now I'm seeing greens and oranges blend together. And I really don't want to completely get rid of that orange because that's the whole idea. These exercises are making me want to experiment with color. So the fact that this sort of peachy, orangey, yellow skin tone was coming across too much, it was kind of giving me a stomach ache. I was getting like really like, oh, boring. I don't want that. I want vibration. So I'm just sort of doing these vertical, very, very light strokes. I'm not smoothing anything, which is completely different than how I used to work. And if I need to go back, I have this Unison Orange 9. It's a very, very bright orange, but I'm using it in such a delicate touch that it's, you know, you could press down really hard. Just kind of trying to put the strokes next to these green on the nose. Because where like maybe I put too much green, I'm just going to come back with just a little bit of orange. And it's a balance. You know, I can see doing too much and then like going what and then having to come back. But it is all about, it's all about having a very gentle touch and just not pressing down too hard. So this is an A18. This is definitely like a dusty rose. So this is going to be like my transition a little bit. Now, if I needed to fix, I like to fix with like a hard pastel. So I'm going to go a lot over the idea of doing soft pastel over hard, hard pastel over soft. Hard pastel, like this Conte of Paris or Faber-Castell, really any pastel pencil. You see, it's like a heart. It doesn't come off on your fingers as much. So I can then kind of go back over this and you can soften or you can slightly just temper, you know, transition a little bit. Much easier with a point like this. Because sometimes when you're using these, it's like you don't exactly know really where you're touching it. And you'll get used to it, but I'm just letting you know that definitely sometimes I'll touch down and go, oh, I didn't mean that. So that's why, I mean, honestly, probably my favorite tool of all is pastel pencils because I could do a whole drawing and be totally fine with a pastel pencil. I actually broke one, so you're going to break things. Keep the little stumps because I can just use this to kind of do this little transition right here. Okay, so just letting you know, you go back and forth between these colors, and it's not a lot of do. This technique, I'm just doing vertical strokes very lightly. Yeah, you don't see me using my finger that much. Sometimes I'll go back to like my old habits, but I find that it doesn't work. So it's like training old dog, you know, with new tricks. And sooner or later, I'm just gonna like stop doing it. Sooner or later, I'm just gonna actually stop touching the paper. But it's really a good idea to kind of do like transitions or to soften, you know, do the subtlety with the hard pastel over the soft.